At the height of the Achaemenid Empire, the name of Persia struck awe and fear across the ancient world. From the gates of Babylon to the temples of Egypt, the banners of Cyrus and his heirs waved triumphantly over conquered lands. To neighbors and enemies alike, Persia seemed unstoppable, a colossus of men, horses, and gold. Its rulers called themselves kings of kings, and few dared challenge their claim. Cambyses II, son of Cyrus the Great, inherited this empire and with it his father's unquenchable ambition. Already, he had swept across Egypt in a lightning campaign that stunned the Mediterranean world. Pharaoh Psamtik III had fallen in battle. Memphis had surrendered. The Nile itself flowed under Persian rule, but for Cambyses, victory was not enough. Conquest, no matter how vast, was incomplete without recognition. The Egyptian people still looked to their gods, to their temples, to the ancient traditions that no conqueror could erase with sword or decree. And one final insult stood in Cambyses' way, a refusal that cut deeper than any rebellion. Far out in the Libyan desert, at the oasis of Siwa, lay the sacred temple of Ammon, the god worshipped by Egyptians as the supreme deity, father of gods and kings. For centuries, pharaohs had journeyed to this oracle to seek legitimacy. It was Ammon's priests who declared whether a ruler was chosen by the divine. Cambyses expected the same. Yet the priests of Siwa refused. To them, Cambyses was no pharaoh, no son of the gods, but an outsider, a usurper. Their rejection stung Cambyses like a wound to his very soul. To a king whose empire stretched across continents, this denial was not merely insult, it was rebellion, defiance, and perhaps blasphemy. And so, in the burning summer of 525 BC, Cambyses gave his answer. On the western edge of the Nile, a force of 50,000 Persian soldiers gathered. An army larger than many entire kingdoms, assembled not for conquest of cities, but for a march into the unknown. Their armor gleamed in the pitiless sun, shields polished and spears upright. Banners rippled against the hot desert wind. Camels groaned under the weight of supplies, food, water, tents, weapons, and gifts for the gods. The air trembled with anticipation, with the low murmur of men bound for glory or oblivion. At their head stood commanders carrying the seal of Cambyses, his orders ringing in their ears. March west, humble the priests of Siwa, and force the god Ammon to bow before Persia. With that, they set off. The army marched beyond Thebes, leaving the fertile Nile behind and pressing into the wilderness. They passed Karga, then Dakhla, oases on the edge of the known world. At every stop, villagers watched in awe and fear. Never before had an imperial army dared push so deep into the Libyan desert. What business had men, no matter how great, in lands where even nomads feared to tread? And so the desert began its silent war. By day, the sun was merciless, a burning eye that blistered skin and melted resolve. The Persians marched across endless dunes, the horizon shimmering with mirages that mocked their thirst. By night, the cold bit like knives, gnawing at their flesh as sand hissed across the camp. Winds rose, carrying with them veils of dust that stung eyes and clogged lungs. Camels collapsed under their burdens, horses balked at shadows, soldiers fell behind, their bodies swallowed by shifting sands, forgotten within moments. But still they pressed onward, driven by discipline, pride, and the unshakable will of their king. Then came the night the desert struck in full. A storm unlike any other swept across the dunes. It began with a whisper, a sigh of wind across the tents. Then, without warning, the sky turned black. The horizon vanished. Walls of sand rose from the earth itself, whipped into frenzy by howling gales. Soldiers shouted, trying to anchor tents, to shield their faces, to hold on to one another. But there was no shelter, no refuge. The storm devoured everything. Men clawed at the air, suffocating as sand filled their mouths and lungs. Camels screamed and vanished into the swirl. Weapons clattered uselessly, swallowed as quickly as the men who carried them. By dawn, silence. The sun rose over emptiness. No banners, no weapons, no soldiers. Only dunes, smooth and unbroken, as if the army had never existed. 50,000 men wiped from the earth in a single night. Not even bones were left behind. Thus was born one of history's greatest mysteries, the lost army of Cambyses. In the centuries that followed, whispers replaced facts. Bedouins told of ghostly figures wandering the desert at twilight, men clad in Persian armor, marching endlessly, never aging, never speaking, condemned to walk the sands forever. Egyptian texts spoke of a cursed host, punished for daring to challenge the gods of the West. They had not been defeated by men, but by the desert itself, the breath of Ammon, some said, sweeping them into oblivion. The priests of Siwa offered no explanations. When travelers asked, they smiled, enigmatic, as if they knew the truth yet chose silence. To them, the desert's vengeance was answer enough. Generations passed. Then came another conqueror, Alexander the Great. Like Cambyses, he too sought legitimacy from the oracle of Ammon. But unlike the Persian king's doomed men, Alexander reached Siwa safely. He stood before the priests, and they declared him the son of the god himself. He returned in glory, his divinity confirmed. The contrast was not lost on history. Cambyses' army had vanished into the sands, unworthy. Alexander had triumphed, chosen by the divine. But speculation never ended. Some claimed the army lay buried beneath 1,000 feet of sand, perfectly preserved. Others believed mutiny had torn the host apart, soldiers scattering into the desert to die forgotten deaths. Still others whispered of lost ruins, ancient cities swallowed by dunes that had consumed the Persians whole. Yet no proof ever emerged. Centuries later, in 1933, legend brushed against reality. Two brothers, Angelo and Alfredo Leto, Italian explorers with more courage than caution, ventured into the western desert. Armed with maps, supplies, and ambition, they sought the army's resting place. For weeks they trudged across the dunes, guided only by rumor and determination. Then, near the Gilf Kabir plateau, they found something. Bronze arrowheads glinting in the sun, fragments of sandals hardened by centuries of heat, scattered weapons unmistakably Persian. At last it seemed the truth was within reach, but the desert had not forgotten. A storm rolled in, sudden and merciless. The expedition was consumed. When rescue parties later searched, only one brother staggered back alive, sunburned, delirious, muttering incoherently about voices in the sand, about unseen eyes watching from beneath the dunes. He never recovered, and the findings were lost. Once again, the desert claimed its secret. Since then, countless expeditions have tried. Archaeologists, geologists, soldiers of fortune. Some returned empty-handed, others never returned at all. The desert kept its silence, and so the mystery endures. What truly happened to Cambyses' 50,000 men? Perhaps the explanation is as simple as nature. The Libyan desert is one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. A sea of dunes where direction is lost in minutes, where survival is measured in drops of water. A sandstorm of sufficient power could indeed bury an entire army, erasing them as thoroughly as if they had never been born. But others wonder if the story runs deeper, if this was not nature, but judgment. As the army marched west, strange phenomena were reported. Horses panicked at night. Fires flickered with unnatural colors. Native guides warned the Persians that the land was cursed, that no army could pass without angering the gods. Cambyses' generals laughed, their discipline stronger than superstition. But laughter does not carry far in a sandstorm. The storm, when it came, was merciless. Skin cracked, lips bled, eyes burned. Winds howled endlessly, stripping flesh from bone. Sand filled armor and lungs alike. Soldiers turned their swords against the storm in madness. Others turned them against each other, preferring death by steel to suffocation. Still others fell to their knees, whispering prayers to gods both Persian and Egyptian. But the desert does not answer prayers. By the 10th day, only a fraction remained. Hollow-eyed, broken, their will shattered. Their commander gathered them and spoke the words no soldier wishes to hear. "We cannot go forward, and there is no way back." Silence followed. One by one, men sank to their knees, not in battle, not in worship, but in surrender. The desert had not only consumed their bodies, it had conquered their spirit. Some say a handful tried to return, but none were ever seen again. Others insist the sands opened and swallowed them into caverns below. Herodotus, writing a century later, gave the first account of the lost army. His words sparked a mystery that has endured for over 2,500 years. To this day, no bones, no armor, no banners have surfaced. Only whispers, only legends, only silence. Yet sometimes when the desert winds howl just right, travelers claim to hear it. The clink of bronze, the echo of marching, the ghostly chorus of men long buried. 50,000 soldiers forever wandering the dunes. The desert holds no pity, only judgment. And perhaps that is the true legacy of Cambyses' army. Not simply a tale of disappearance, but a warning. Pride may conquer kingdoms, but it cannot conquer nature. The sands remember. The sands always win. If you enjoyed this journey into forgotten history, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Bill Gage for more cinematic stories from the ancient world.